Hi folks, Foreman Mateo here to let you know when you have to put your ceiling up, consider really heavy metal tubing. 1,000-pound ceiling? Sure, maybe. But it'll be a strong ceiling and no one will be able to punch a hole through it. Hey, where are you going? Oh, you think it's a bad idea? You're right, we should use cedar planks. Alright, you ready to go? Okay, let's do it.
Right across this country into the starlight, 12,000 miles, turn back, do it again. No destination, it's just a journey. You were my lover and friend.
This is episode 7. The Unicell is not a work van anymore because we are installing solar panels up on that roof, and we are also doing a cedar plank ceiling. Let's get right into it this week with our solar panel install. Now in episode 5, you saw us do our Unistrut roof rack. So if you want to see how we did all of those different components and installed it on the roof, go back and check out that episode. We'll show you exactly how we did it. Now that that was finished, the only thing left to do was to actually get our solar panels and put them up on the roof.
When it comes to solar, there is a lot of planning and forethought that goes into this. If you have a blank canvas, really think this out to try to maximize what you can fit up there, and you can kind of build your system back from there. So if you go 12, 24, or 48 volt, this is a good place to start. We had made all of these measurements when we were making the roof rack, so we were ready to get the panels up there. We ended up choosing to go with these Alpha Rec 400s. So they're 400 watt panels. They are 24 volt, and we got 3 of them for a total of 1,200 watts. When looking at these panels, you're getting into residential size. So you do run into some challenges of acquiring single panels. A lot of companies don't want to sell them off that way. They're meant to sell for a full house or project, so they want to sell pallets of them. So you got to do your homework and you got to find the sites that will sell you singles, but they also have to be the ones that fit and the voltage you want. So this can be a little challenging. I'm really excited to see how these things perform because these are a newer cell technology that is on these panels than our previous, and they have a higher efficiency rating. So I think you'll actually see a lot closer to that 400 watt number. A lot of times panels are rated 200 watts, 400 watts, but one, that's absolutely perfect conditions, and 2, it seems to be a bit inflated at times, and it comes back to the efficiency of the cells themselves. So I am really excited to see how these work. So when we were mapping this out, I got real excited about the size of the roof and thought we could get 500 watt panels up there. And while we could have, we would have needed to sacrifice the chimney. We really like the heater, and it needs an actual exit point out of the roof. So we had to go a little smaller to make that work. Whenever you get to the residential size panels, about 350 watts and up, you're going to be either getting 24 or 48 volts in most cases. We kind of let whatever panels fit determine the size of the system. 24 volts is like pretty much perfect for this system size.
Of course, the first step in this process was to actually get the panels up on the roof. These are big panels. As Drew said, they're residential size, so we enlisted the help of Kevin. So he came and helped. I was on the other side of the vehicle. Once they got up on the roof, I would kind of help pull them across and into place. This was really the moment of truth with that roof rack because we designed and built it to the specs of the solar panels that we saw online. And if we learned anything from those windows that we did, sometimes things can be a little bit off. And while we did have some wiggle room, we wanted it to be flush and just perfect. So we were really crossing our fingers, just hoping that everything would line up straight. And it did. They were absolutely perfect. The panels are completely flush with the sides of the Unistrut, which means all of the hardware and everything that we went with to secure the panels down should work perfectly.
Yeah, while we did our due diligence and measured and measured and measured again before installing the rack, I would recommend getting your panels first before you commit to mounting that roof rack. It can be easy to mismeasure. Sometimes spec sheets are wrong. So if you have the panels on hand when you are setting up the roof rack, you can make sure that is perfect. That's how I've done it in the past. This is the first time I did the rack ahead of time, and I was a little nervous that we might have mismeasured something. Luckily, they were good to go.
That was a good moment when you put all this work into something and then see it finally come to fruition and it's exactly what you imagined. That is always a good moment. Between Drew, my dad, and I, we got all 3 panels up onto the roof. We had to kind of slide them around, make sure they were positioned exactly how we wanted them so we could start to lock them in place.
And these measurements were so tight, particularly between the 2 vent fans. The panels are about 40 inches wide, so you have to have each of those. That's 80 inches, but you also need room for the brackets. The unistrut between the vent fans just made it.
Very tight.
We didn't have any room to spare. We needed every inch of that roof to fit 3 of them the way we oriented them.
These panels looked really good on the roof. I think once you get solar on the outside of a vehicle, especially this vehicle being a work truck in its original form, this is the moment where it is not a work truck anymore. It really looks like that build that we were envisioning.
Ideally here, I would run all the wires, do all the connections, but I could not find my solar crimper. Being that these are 8-gauge wires, I need to get a more specific crimper because the kind of basic solar one only goes up to 10. We went with 8-gauge wire on this because the maximum output could in theory reach up to 50 amps, and that's just a little bit too much for a 10-gauge wire without putting them into series to raise the voltage. And the crimper for the 8-gauge connectors is not common. If you don't already have one that would work for that, I had a hard time finding what I needed even online. So we did find it. So we just have to wait now. I hope it comes faster than what they say.
The ship time said 1 to 2 months, so cross your fingers for us that it comes in a week or 2.
All that being said, I did prep and run all the wire. I just need to put a couple connections on the MC4 connectors when the crimper comes and click them together. So all that is sort of done. It'll just be, a couple connections and then it'll be good to go. So these panels will be in parallel. They will meet a 3-to-1 conversion MC4 connector, and then we would just run 2 wires through the roof. So I drilled the hole for that. It's prepped, it's ready to go. I'm a big fan of keeping the panels in parallel when you can, if they're in series. If you have partial shading, you don't get the power from that whole block of panels. So if you have like 3 or 4 in series together and it's partially shaded, you're drawing no power there. I believe this is how it works. This is what I've read. I can't verify it. I've never run the test. So I'm a fan of keeping them in parallel, which is why I needed the big 8-gauge wire, because once those 3 meet, they have the potential of a 50 amp peak, which 10-gauge wire is not big enough to handle that for very long. It would get too hot. You got to make sure that wire size is right.
For actually mounting these solar panels to the Unistrut, we decided to look online to see if there was some kind of bracket available just to speed up the whole process. If you saw the bus last summer, we made our own brackets, and on our bus before that, we made brackets as well, but a different kind. So on each roof rack, we've done something different. They've all worked just fine, but each build has kind of called for its own type of mounting system.
Yeah, including our van. This will be the 4th solar install. This will be the 4th different way I've actually connected the panels themselves to the rack or the roof.
We ended up finding solar panel mounting Z brackets on Amazon.
And right away, I like that. They have a slotted design. So if your panel is of a different depth, you can adjust the slot. There's, I think, 4 spots there. If it's fatter, you can put it on the higher one. If it's narrower, you can put it on the lower one. We got them up there. I went to put it in there and I realized, oh, the nuts are not meant for Unistrut. So I had to change that out. Went and bought some. Didn't realize they're actually metric. So I should have brought that screw with me. Not a big deal, but I was at the point of now I have to try to find metric ones or make my own. Looked online, they do have metric Unistrut nuts. These are M6, but I had some smaller Unistrut nuts sitting around, so I just decided to go ahead and drill those out and tap them with a M6 threading tap, so I could just make them myself. It actually went pretty fast, so it was worth doing that instead of waiting a couple days for them to come in the mail.
Once the solar panels were on the roof, we had our brackets and we had our plan. The only thing to do was to get up there and actually do the install. So we would put some Loctite onto the bolt itself, feed it through the bracket, down into the unistrut nut, and tighten everything down. We went around and did this process for each bracket in each of the mounting points. Overall, I thought this was a really easy install.
For sure, using these prefab brackets, it was just a lot quicker. And I do want to emphasize, panels of this size, you definitely want at least 6 points of contact. You need something in the middle. So I was really happy we did that third strut in the center of the roof. And we just did 1, 2, 3, 4 each corner, and then split the difference, grab from each side. So the panel itself is set on the unistrut, and then the bracket is coming off and grabbing the panel at 6 different points of contact, and it feels pretty strong. After the initial lockdown of the nuts, I do feel pretty good that these are in there strong, but I think for a little overkill after we test it, I may put just a bracket on the side of each unistrut on the outsides, just so there's no way that could possibly vibrate and slide left or right. If there's like a little bracket there, it won't have any room to move, even if it does move. So that's probably overkill, but knowing me, I most likely am going to do that. There's a part of me that just wants to make sure there's no chance, since they're not bolted directly to the panels themselves.
All 3 panels are locked down onto the unistrut using these Z brackets. We are really happy with how this install went. You can grab onto the panels and shake the whole vehicle, so we're not worried about these going anywhere. After a little bit of testing and driving the vehicle around, we might decide to put the bracket on the sides of the panels just for insurance, but we'll let you know down the road if we decide to do that or not. Overall, I think we're really happy with these panels, with the install and the unistrut. Now all that's left to do is actually get them installed into the power system, and that'll be coming up in an episode very soon.
Now that we had the rack and the solar completely locked down, we knew we were done with that. We could move on to the ceiling without having to worry about changing anything.
You have to have your roof rack finished before you do anything with the ceiling, because those bolts are coming down through the supports in the roof. So if you have to keep accessing those and locking things down with the roof rack, you can't cover up your ceiling. Now that we were done with all of that, it was time for one of my favorite parts of the build, and that is when that cedar plank ceiling goes up. I love this day in the build. You may have noticed that we really love these cedar tongue and groove planks. We've put them in all of the builds that we've done. We used it in our bus, and we just love them so much that we added them to all the builds going forward.
This is one of those products that is very popular, and a lot of people use them, but I know why. They're just nice. They look good. They look good with any color scheme, and they smell nice.
They're also thin, so they're lightweight, they're easy to get up on the ceiling. Our install process with these planks through the years has been pretty easy overall. Now, our ceiling is not just a ceiling. It is an invisible mounting system for our projector and projector screen. We sell a downloadable plan for this projector and screen mounting system on our website. We will link that in the description below. I really love this downloadable plan because it is one of the more fun things that you can do in the build. A lot of what we talk about are these core systems, and this one is just pure fun. It's a way to mount your projector and your screen in multiple places around your bus.
Yeah, it really solves the issue of wanting a big screen but not having a big bulky TV that either is permanently installed or has to be stored and set up different places. So it gives you the option to put the screen wherever you want it, and it's really cool. As soon as you get that up there, it's just like, this is amazing.
We designed this system to be invisible using magnets because I love this ceiling so much. I think the cedar planks are beautiful, and I could not imagine just screwing hooks into the ceiling so that we could mount our projector. So we came up with this system when we were doing our bus, and I'm sure you've seen the pictures and different videos of us using the projector. So if you want to install this system in your own build, you can head to ourwaytorome.com, and we have all of our downloadable plans right there for you. The first thing we had to do was gather all of our components to do the install. Now we're working through our plan for this project just to make sure that everything is perfect. So we went through that materials list and bought everything that we need. Once we had everything, we had to make the little frames for the magnets that get embedded into the ceiling. So I went through, made all those cuts, and assembled each of the frames so that once we were actually putting the ceiling planks up in place, we could just stick those in and they were all ready to go.
Yeah, I am on my way up. I won't slow down. I'm strolling down the street with all of my favorite songs on repeat. I'm dancing through. Everything's about to come my way, and I don't care if you spill coffee on me or if the sky is gray or blue. No, I don't care, 'cause I am on my way.
Now the projector screen that we use is actually a blackout roller shade. This is really convenient because it has all of its own hardware that you can mount the magnets to. We keep ours up in place while we're driving. You can pull it down when you want to use it, and then it retracts when you don't want to use it. We've used this for years. They come in custom sizes, so you can buy the exact one that you need for your space. It's just a really great product that wasn't designed to be a projector screen, but it works perfectly for it.
Big part of this process is lining up your projector in your screen. You got to get this right. It's okay if it's a little small, but you do not want the image to be larger than where the screen is. And this is kind of a pain because somebody has to hold the screen up, somebody has to hold the projector in place, actually running and shooting the image out, and it's pretty precise. You need to get that depth just right. So you need to get in there before you install anything. Just kind of try it out, figure out where the screen needs to be, where the projector needs to be, mark on your ceiling, that's where your magnets are gonna go. Make sure you get this right, because once those things are embedded in the ceiling, you're not changing it.
It is worth it to take the time to do this right and make sure that each of your mounting locations are perfect, because yeah, you are not moving this once the ceiling is in place.
After we had all of the mounting positions for the projector and screen locked down, we marked them off, and it was time to move on to running the wires for both the ceiling lights and the vent fans. You got to make sure you have these in place before you start putting the planks up, because you'll have a hard time fishing the wire through that ceiling if you forget. We went with 16 gauge wire for the lights. This is more than enough. These pull very low watts. And the vent fan, these ones run a bit more than our Fantastic fans. I think they have a 5 amp max, so I did gauge up to 14 on those, which is plenty for the length of run I have in this build. Had all the wires lined up, put them back to where I'm going to have distribution so then I can wire them in later.
Now the magnets were lined up, the wires are in place. It was finally time to actually start putting the planks up on the ceiling.
Yeah, I am on my way up.
This is kind of a multi-part process. You put the adhesive up on the furring strips, you cut your planks to size, press them up onto the ceiling, and then we shoot very small brad nails into the plank where each of the furring strips are. Now we always say not to use nails, so in this case the brad nails are kind of just holding the planks up so that the adhesive can dry and hold them in place.
When starting this process, the key is to start on the center line and work outwards in both directions, doing a full run before you move on to the next row. Otherwise, you're going to run into some problems where the boards are going to start getting a little bit skewed and they're not going to fit together. Really, the key is getting that first 4 boards straight. If you get those straight, it just goes out easy. If they're off a little bit, you're going to have a hard time fixing this problem. So make sure center line, 1 row, 2 row, 3 row. Do not do partial rows or you're going to have a real headache.
Again, this is a place where it really makes a difference to take the time to get it right, because if those first few planks are not right, you are going to have a headache for all of the planks that come after them. So just take the time to line them up, make sure they're straight, measure, check again, and it'll make the whole job a lot easier. So we worked through all our rows of planks until we would reach a spot where a magnet had to go, and that was marked onto our insulation board. It's what we spent time marking a few steps ago. So when we would see that traced circle, I would take one of the frames, put some glue on it, put the magnet in, and press it up into the ceiling. Now that magnet is secured right in place. It has its framing, so it's not going to move around over time. And we did this just for each magnet location. You gotta remember this as you're working through. If you forget about the magnets, that is really tough to go back and get them in the right spot. There's a lot to think of as you're doing this install. You also need to keep in mind where you want your puck lights to go, because when you get to that row, you have to make sure that all of them are in the right spot and drill the holes. This is really easy to do with a hole saw, and for our lights, they're all on the same row of planks. So once you reach the puck light row, you do all of them, and then they're in place.
Yep, once again, don't forget this or you're gonna be pretty upset. Once we reached the edge of the ceiling where it meets the wall, I made sure to have a hole allowing the wires to come out of the planks in each location. Then I just cut the wires back to size, and I'll be able to wire them up later when I get to that step.
Those holes will eventually be in cabinets or in small little divider walls. So eventually those will be hidden, but you have to know where all those places are so you can actually get the wires out of the ceiling. And just like that, we were finished with the ceiling. I really think that with this ceiling install, the preparation up to the install is more work than actually getting the planks up on the ceiling. There's so much that goes into the prep for this, especially with the invisible mounting system, that by the time you actually start putting planks up on the ceiling, you're almost finished.
Yeah, take your time. Otherwise, it's going to actually take you more time because you'll be ripping planks out, buying more planks. Plan it, go slow. You got this. And man, it looks so good when you get that ceiling in there.
If you want to do this install into your own build, we have a downloadable plan on our website. We have this system in our own bus and we use it constantly. It's a really fun and functional feature to have in your build.
All right, guys, that wraps it up. The solar is locked into place, ready to power this bus. The ceiling is in, it's starting to look really good. Very excited to keep going, and we will see what comes up in the next few weeks. It's gonna look really good.
This week was super motivating. Getting that solar on the roof is prepping for your full electrical install, which is really, really exciting. And getting that ceiling installed is the first step for the interior to actually take shape into a livable space. We are so excited to be moving forward. Thank you guys for being here with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.